Hey guys, still here and welcome back to Wargame. Today we're following a new player. And when I say new player, I mean a very, very new player. This is JishuRoy. And before you all start hammering the comment section going, oh god, this is painful to watch, we all had to start somewhere. If you have constructive criticism, then please watch the video and post it down below. If you don't, then please stop watching and don't go toxic on this guy, because we're all trying to learn the game. Or at least he is. Anyway, Death Row, destruction game. So there is no, well, aside from income, there's no exact reason why you would want to go very aggressive on this map. JishuRoy is using a mechanized deck, Commonwealth, which gives you quite a bit of flexibility because you got quite a decent selection of infantry units that you're going to need if you want to push Delta. But you are fighting Redfor, and, well, Redfor is almost always going to win these town fights because their infantry is just outright better. Redfor over here is being played by Jazz, experienced guy. He has over a couple of hundred battles at this point. I did check the stats. He's going with BTR 80As. Looking at the veterancy, I'd say those could very well be carrying Spetsnaz. Skrzydz, again, high veterancy, potentially VDV. MI-24V, interestingly landed, not hovering above the buildings. And over here on the left, another couple of BMD-1s, BTR 70 and ACV. Now, I'm going to be pointing out quite a few things that I noticed during the replay that I think JishuRoy could improve upon. If you're a newer player, don't try to improve everything at once. I'm going to be pointing out more things than you can probably focus on in one particular playthrough. And by that I mean, I'll be pointing out a lot of stuff, and while you're actually playing the game, you won't be able to remember everything and play the game at the same time. So just pick out a few things that you're going to think, yeah, I'm going to try that next video, or next game. Anyway, he's pushing out with infantry over here. Starting with positioning, this is not great, because your vehicles off-road are only doing 50. On the road, they are more than twice as fast at 110. So always start your vehicles on the road. Especially since you're not looking to offload them here, or at least I hope you're not looking to offload them here. These are just out of position. Always start them on the road. And sure enough, early on that can be a little cluttered, because you're going to have units which you might task for this area, some for this area, some for that area. Sort them out as they start moving. Now over here he also has units, but he's not moving these at all. Probably still sorting out what's going on over here. Looking at mobility, I'd say these guys are actually tasked with going over here instead of going over to here, for example. Now he's moving into the forest over here. He's looking to, I guess, set up an early perimeter. But this is, I would say, a rookie mistake. This is exactly how I played when I was starting with Red Dragon and Ireland Battle. I started with securing the closest sector, but you need to go towards the enemy and try and see how far you can go. Because you can always fall back, but you cannot fall forward. You cannot keep pushing up. Always try to get more terrain, and then fall back if you have to. If you don't encounter anything, keep going. And he is just setting up his units. This Stormer cannot fire unless something happens to fly directly over it. But it is in a very vulnerable position, because infantry that could push in from over here walks right into the Stormer and shoots it. So I would say if you have your infantry units, either set them out over here or keep pushing, or set them up as a picket line if you have to. Or if you don't have any infantry nearby, keep this vehicle on the other side of it. Because right over here, the Stormer, which is expensive, is in a pretty bad position. Now you can see that Jazz on the other team is immediately capturing terrain. Charlie is, of course, his by default. Alpha is captured and Bravo is captured. That gives him 4 points more income than Jishu has. So Jishu is already at a disadvantage. He has moved up his left flank. Commandos, recon vehicle, but a recon vehicle in the middle of a forest doesn't spot anything. Make sure you keep those on the outsides here, on the outer line. I would park it over here, personally, because it can spot over here, it can spot there, it can spot there. Over here, it doesn't see anything. Sure enough, it's still moving. It might still actually be making its position more favorable, but over here, it's going to be hard to spot anything. You might spot something going up there, but that's exceptionally unlikely unless you're playing with a lot more players, and some people might actually go here and try to flank. But in this game mode, 1v1, I wouldn't play it like this. Now the enemy is pushing a couple of BMD-1s. Interestingly, pushing with BMD-1s is not something I would do through a forest because the Groms don't fire fast enough. They only get one shot before they get killed off by infantry, if that. I would push with an autocannon or a grenade launcher and let my infantry push first and then have the vehicles push with them. So Jazz also made a mistake over here. Now, he does set up a picket line here at JishuRoy, but a bit of a weird one. It's like he has the idea of the picket line in his head, but he's just using some cheap transports and no recon. This is going to come back to bite him later. Recon over here is important. Just place one reconnaissance unit over here or over there or in these buildings if you want to, and you can spot pretty much the entire field. Right now you're relying on the optics of the 432 or the Warrior. These have poor optics, the Warriors have medium optics, which isn't bad, but is usually not good enough to identify the unit until it's, well, not quite on top of it, but quite close. So set up a reconnaissance unit. It just needs to be one. A cheap recon unit. Something like this could do it. M113, or yeah, M113A1 MRV. Put it over there. That's all you need to do. Now, he's still not really making contact with the enemy, nor is he looking to. I always want to know what my enemy is doing and where they are. And at the moment, I don't know. I know that they're in Bravo, or at least something is capping Bravo. I, at this point, can assume that they're in Delta, because, well, that's the next logical step where they would be, and for all I know, they might be sitting over here, and I probably wouldn't even know it. So your infantry needs to be either on the edge here, if you want to be defending, or pushing out, trying to find the enemy. Now the enemy is also flanking with a couple of helos here. We got a number 24K and a V. That should be something that the Stormer can hold off, especially in combination with the RBS-70, but the Stormers, well, any AA really, it needs a direct line of sight. And if you don't have it, this thing won't fire. If you want to be defending over here against helos, I'd say use the RBS-70. And if you want to use the Stormer, I would put it over here. Because if you look at this position, you can look right up that hill, and anything that flies over this tree line is going to get shot at. That's when you're using that range. You're using that 3150. Over here, you might get a shot at 500, 600 meter range, if that. Which means that you're wasting a lot of potential for this unit. And one of the main selling points for the Stormer HVM for me is that it can take out the helicopters at a greater range than the helicopter can fire their HEGM back at me. Now sure enough, these helos don't even have HEGMs. Rocket pods can still really hurt. But still, the Stormer needs to be in open area. Something else that I'm worried about is how much can he actually see? Nothing. He doesn't know where any of the Redfor units are. Let's count recon units. There, we can finally see the M24K. Let's count recon. We got one recon unit over here, one over there. Period. That's it. That's a very, very low amount of recon. Recon should be scattered all over the field. Because they're your eyes, they're your ears. They tell you what's going on. Right now, you don't know anything. Interestingly, the Mi-24K does seem to be spotting the recon vehicle in return. Aside from that, they don't know anything either. He has Rezvedka in the forest, deep. I'm not sure why. Quad stacker Spatsnaz, Rezvedka over here. See, these guys are actually pretty well positioned. Because these can spot quite a bit that's coming down this field. But currently there's nothing. And over here he has a BRDM-3. Over on the left, you could argue he needs more picket, but he has the Mi-24K, which should be sufficient at this point. But you need more recon, Jishu. At this point, you just don't see what's going on. You're operating blind. Now, to make matters worse, his recon's optics got disabled. The helos, these guys are playing a dangerous game, by the way. you never know what the enemy has in the sense of man-pads. So, let's say infantry carried anti-air weaponry. Stormer is looking for a vengeance, but doesn't know where the helos are. Risky, this play, because for all you know, these helos could be baiting you. And by baiting, I mean there could be an infantry squad over here, and they're just waiting to see what comes out as a response force to that helicopter incursion. Right now, it's nothing. Right now, you're clear, but that could easily be different. Now, Jazz flies over with his seed. Stormer takes a couple of shots at it, hits him twice. Might even get the kill if it gets lucky. No, it's out of range. There's no radar guided AA, so that's alright. Jazz is bringing in a couple of Urals over there. Let's see about your unit setup. Oh dear. Actually, I'll just let it play. The Fusiliers have taken up the building. And these guys are standing in parade, waiting for nothing. Because they cannot shoot any direction. If you want your Milans to be useful, place them here. Because here they can cover a lot of the area. Over here they cannot cover anything. The Fusiliers in here are currently very much wasted. They cannot do anything unless the battle comes to them. I would be using my Fusiliers in a much more aggressive position. I would have them here, or in contact with the VDV more likely. And I would have these buildings just unoccupied. Maybe an ATGM unit over here as a sort of stopgap measure, or a recon unit right next to it. But aside from that, I would have these buildings clear, because I don't need them. I want to be using my points and my units to push, not to defend. Now at this point they have played for about 10 minutes. A little less, maybe actually 5. A couple of minutes to set up. 45 points for Jishu, 20 for Jazz. That's because he killed the recon and these guys were killed. That was the BMD-1s. Now he's pushing with Scratchet and more VDV. You still don't know what's out here. And sure enough, you're in the forest, so a recon unit over here is not likely to spot these guys. As VDV have very good, good stealth, and Razvedka has very good stealth, so you wouldn't even see these guys unless you were right on top of them. But you're still not pushing. You're still not looking for contact with the enemy. You're just playing a very defensive game, which for now works. But keep in mind that Redfor has this +4. That means that he is simply going to outspend you. He's going to be buying more stuff. And that might work against Redfor, as he might also have a tendency to throw more stuff at you that you can then fairly easily kill. On the other hand, if he pushes, you won't have the forces to counter it, if he really is dedicated. Now we have a little skirmish going on here. I'm not sure why he's not continuing that assault. Because this was a miniature fight over here. Just a couple of VDV. And that was all. It's like they lost one. These guys lost one. But they don't even know it yet. And that's it. Now you're pulling your units back. Why? Because at this point there's no real threat to the commandos. Sure enough, they took one loss. But that's all. Also, we have a BRDM-3 on the right. Is it spotting anything? Not from its current position. When it gets to the edge, it might spot something. Nope, not yet. But here's the flip side. You're not seeing it either. You have no idea that there's a recon unit moving around. Over here you still have some defenses. There's another M113 joining this area. But this is a pretty big area where people can just push through. Warrior Milans usually go down fairly quickly to infantry. Against that BRDM-3 that's operating over there, you have a very easy chance of taking it down. But if there was infantry pushing through here, you'd have a problem. Because they can take out your Sultan, they can take out your Stormer, they can take out your vehicles, and then what are you going to do? Because then they're at the ends of the tree line. They can set up HEGMs, they can push further into this area, and you just have 0 units to defend. I also think that he might have a lot of points in reserve. Because sure enough, I'm seeing some units being spawned in, but very few. And we have another recon unit in the middle of the forest. Keep these recon units on the outsides. Not inside the forest. Doesn't work. Over here, we have 1 recon vehicle too deep inside the forest. It cannot see anything here. It needs to be on the edge of the tree line. And ideally not even here, but I'd say here, here, any of these spots. Now, this is when the BRDM comes too close and gets killed off by the warrior. But the fact that the enemy was able to get here, uncontested and undetected, should be telling you something. It should be telling you that he's probing your lines. He's probing to see where you're weak. And as the more observant of you have potentially already noticed, as the large red dots on the screen kept increasing, Jazz is preparing a push. T80BV, T64B, Recon Unit, Breusa, and that's just the start. T80BV, T64, another Breusa, another Recon Unit, and another one. Now similarly, Jazz is not looking to push the contact either. He's not looking for a fight. Sure enough, he's probing here and there. Once again, flying a seed over. And getting shot at to some extent. But not bad enough yet. Oh, there comes the Eurofighter. Well done. I wonder why he kept flying the seed around. Jazz. Because he's not looking to push with helicopters. I'm not seeing a helicopter offensive. I'm not seeing any large bombing runs follow up. Because he just wouldn't know where the enemy is. He doesn't have eyes on them. Now, sure enough, there are 2 Mi-28s sorry, 1 Mi-28 and 1 Mi-24V coming in. But even so, I would first push in with the seed and then immediately follow up with the helicopters when there's nothing shooting back at me. And if there's something shooting back at me, I would not push up with the helos. Because then I know it's infrared AA and I cannot, or well, the infrared AA is shooting back, but I can't see it. So it has to be infrared. And then sure enough, I could push in the helos, but it'd be very risky. I would need to push in with something else. I would be marking with attack markers where those rockets were launched from. What infrared AA was firing back at me and where. And then either take artillery shots at it or send in infantry. Now let's speed things along a little bit. This offensive is building up. Seriously building up. And you have no idea that it's happening. Because this is what Jishu can see. 1 recon unit over here. And you'd have seen this. And you'd be going, oh shit. They're coming from this flank. But if you have a recon unit over here that's holding its fire, you still have plenty of time to set up defenses. Since your spawn zone is over here, and even your land sector, your land reinforcement routes here, you can roll in units from here and set up, in the way I would do it, HEGMs here and there. Some tanks in the second line to also assist if something comes too close. You would spot that this is Estrela, so infrared. This is radar guided, which you could take out with a seed if you were really adamant about it. It's not really required, unless you were countering them with helicopters. And this is something that I do see some newer players do as well. They fly over seed for no reason. Like Jazz did. Jazz flew over with the Breusa, sorry, not with the Breusa, with the MiG. The MiG got shot at, so the enemy AA gave their position away and then was not punished for it. Now, when can we see these things? There. Now we know that there's Mi-28s, and the Mi-28s can see you. That would be courtesy of the spotting capability of the Mi-24K. That's the Mi-24K that you saw operating here. It flew all the way around, potentially even going back to refuel. I wouldn't be surprised if it flew all the way back. And now it's pushing. You have a picket line, but nothing that can take out air units other than the Stormer, which is too deep inside the forest. So this could get quite problematic. Sure enough, he's only taking cheap vehicles. Warrior Milans, a couple of transports. It's nothing too serious, but the follow-up could be a problem. Why this guy, however, is not pushing fast across the road, I don't know. Maybe it's a tactical decision to make sure he doesn't get clustered. In which case, I could respect that. Otherwise... yeah, that was not a great idea. Then again, he saw helicopters. Even so, if you see two MI-24Vs with Iglas, you don't push him in the plane. It's very risky. And I don't think he was able to see any of those AA units at all until they opened up. There's another Eurofighter. He's trying it again. Yikes. Well, the thing's held together by duct tape and a prayer, but it's still flying. Yep, that thing actually made it out. The enemy is countering with two Su-27Ss. That's a pretty heavy air response. Oh, he's being very aggressive with these birds. Look at that. He was actually probing your lines with his planes. I think you might got one of them, and the other one is still trying to evac. This one probably got killed off by a combination of the RBS and the Stormer. Yep. And an ADATS and a Chieftain. So you now have your defenses against the helos set up, the Chieftain and the ADATs, but what do you have against the tanks? What are you bringing against the tanks? Well, he's not bringing anything against the tanks because he doesn't know that the tanks are there. That's the problem. Now, sure enough, Jazz just wasted 400 points in helicopters, plus plane. So, Jishu is now sitting at 1,000 just by defending. But this is not the only attack that Jazz is carrying out. He's also pushing with the BTR ADAs. Unsupported. BTR ADAs should be used in support of infantry, not as a lead vehicle, unless the enemy has absolutely nothing there. There's also a massive airstrike underway. MiG-25, two IL-102s, Yaks. Everything is trying to converge in this position. But where exactly this IL-102 is trying to go, I don't know. I think he's trying to go very deep inside the airspace and trying to take out the ADATs, potentially the Chieftain, although it'd be a pretty impressive feat if he could take this thing down with one blow. Yeah, he dropped right on top of the ADATs. Now that is dedication right there. It's also foolish, because you're spending a 180-point aircraft to take down a anti-air unit that's around 100 points. So you're trading poorly. This is going to cost you points, not gain them. He's also pushing with the VDV and Spetsnaz. In this case, if I'm pushing a forest, I would push Spetsnaz first, VDV second, or at least very close together, because you're more likely to encounter infantry first, which is something that the Spetsnaz excels with. And if you encounter vehicles, then you bring in the VDV and their Vampire will take them out very quickly. Now, what do you know about the vehicles? You don't know anything about the vehicles. If you see that there's this much coming in, a couple of helos and then one tank, never assume it's one tank. Bring more recon. In this case, if he has it, I would bring in a reconnaissance helicopter. Because it's the fastest and most flexible... That's a way to kill a tank. Most flexible way to get more information about what's going on. He's getting a lot of kills. Yak 38M. There's another kill. What can Jazz see? Oh shit, Jazz, what are you doing? Jazz is pushing with a tank and AA, and the recon is behind. So he is operating pretty blind as well. Now we have an encounter with what I assume to be chieftains. Yeah, Chieftain 10s. There's a Rover Milan over there, which is not an ideal anti-tank weapon. If you're running low on weapons or on points, this can do in a pinch, but otherwise I wouldn't use it. Reason? Range. 2450. This vehicle has to be stationary when a tank, for example, this one is coming at it. So it fires, or first rather, it sits still, then it takes a couple of seconds to aim, and then it fires. Then the missile starts traveling. And by that time, the tank is no longer there, it's probably here. Now you can't fire and move away. He can. He can move and fire at the same time with relatively good accuracy because it's a BV. So this guy is going to come at you, shoot you once, and kill you. And that means that the missile, which is still in the air at that point, will not hit because it is guided. And if you're not guiding it, it will simply just veer off target and go somewhere else. So in this case, and of course I have perfect information because I'm looking at it on neutral. If you really wanted to counter this, there are several different approaches of doing it. The chieftains are not a bad idea, but they're a little undergunned, especially against the T80BV. This thing has 17 frontal armor. These things can punch through 16. So even at their maximum range, they won't be able to penetrate the T80BV if this thing sits at max range. This thing at max range can penetrate 18 points of armor, and these are coming in with 14. So he'll be able to do damage to you, and you will not be able to do damage to him. And that's the problem. Anyway, several different ways of doing it. One, get more information. You don't know what the enemy has. This is what you can see. This is what he has. There's another T-64, there's recon, there's fuel supplies. You don't see it. Now, if you wanted to counter it, if you have the points, you could go for a helicopter counter, which means that you buy helicopters. In which case, I would also try to fly over with a seed aircraft. In the case of a Commonwealth, that would be a Harrier. I think that's the Sea Harrier with the seed missiles. That could spot the Bryusas and take them out. It has a couple of missiles. These things only require one. If they hit, they're dead. That leaves you with just the Strela, which doesn't have great range against helicopters, 26-25. That coincidentally happens to be the range of your Lynxes. But if you can then overwhelm the Strela, or take it out with, well, even a transport will do, or a chieftain, then you can fly in with the helicopters and mop up whatever else is left. Alternatively, bring in something with long-range anti-tank missiles, or something that's not very easy to kill with a Breusa or a tank. Buildings over here could fill that role, although once again the Milans, especially the two-man teams like these, are very, very fragile. You do have, what's the name again? It's not the Stormer, although a Stormer could do in a pinch. It has a 2600 meter ground range, but its AP is very limited. It could take out the Bryusas, but not the tank. What else could you use? The Brits have this anti-tank weapon, but I completely blanked on the name of it. I'll just look it up after. Otherwise, just bring in a Super Heavy. A Challenger 2. A Challenger 1 Mark 3. That's something that can really give the T-64s and the T-80s a run for its money. Now, he's also pushing here. We've got the Spatsnaz coming in and the VDV. Oh, this is one big bombing target. Not that you would see it, because it's too deep inside the forest. But if you just blanket this area, and you're a Commonwealth deck, so an F-111C, then everything goes away. That could wipe out this entire forest. But at this point, the enemy's overwhelming you, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's going, oh shit, 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 what do I do? So, sure enough, the more experienced players might go, okay, there's infantry in here, I just need to send a bombing round, done. A newer player, I understand that he doesn't quite get that it's too busy. There's too much going on. Now, at this point, Jazz is at 920, JishuRoy is at 2480. He, with his defense, was successful in getting a lot of points. What are you doing? He's pushing with a Stormer. Yeah, you deserve that. Stormer is not designed to take out transports. It's designed as an anti-air unit. And it can do that very well. It cannot do anything... What? It cannot do anything else very well. What heretic is clustering buildings? Cluster bombs don't work on infantry. Well, okay, sure enough they work, but only as a means to panic them. They don't actually damage them. So this tells me that Jazz 2 is not a very experienced player. Sure enough, he might have a couple hundred battles, but that doesn't mean that he is really very good at the game. I mean, I'm not very good at the game, but at least I have a fair idea of what I'm doing at this stage. Akula flies over. What? What is he hoping to do? I'm Jazz. I'm sitting here. What am I looking at? I'm looking at transports. Jazz over here called in the wrong helicopter. The Akula is an anti-tank helicopter. You can see that by its main armament. It has 12 of those Vickers missiles, which are exceptionally good against tanks. 26 AP means you cut through absolutely everything. Range is good, accuracy is good, and they carry 12 of them. They don't have any rocket pods. They do have a main gun, but it's more of a fallback weapon. And they got a couple of Igla Vs in case you want to take out anything that flies. He is going in without a spotter, other than the Spatsnaz and the Rozvetka, to try and take out some transports, I guess. Or he called it in 5 minutes ago and forgot about it. I'm not sure. But you don't send in something like this if you're dealing with infantry. And you don't send in something like this if you know that or if you don't exactly know what you're dealing with. So this Akula is very much out of place. And potentially will get punished for it. No, the AA just died. And this one doesn't have any ammo. What are you... Yeah, it's just using it as a gun platform. If you wanted to use a helicopter over here, you can. But use one of these. Or even an Mi-24P. It doesn't have to be a VP. The VP is definitely a good helo. But a P could do it all the same. Because it also has that GSK-30 or a GSH-30K autocannon and the rocket pods. And it is cheaper. Spatsnaz are pushing in very aggressively, as they should, because they will wipe out any infantry unit that still survives. But at this point, if he kills one more helo, then JishuRoy actually wins. Yep, he got one. Alright, in case you're wondering, very new player, 11 multiplayer battles, 5 victories, 6 defeats, 45% win rate. Recon percentage, 1.6. That is very low. You need to be using a lot more reconnaissance because you don't know what is going on and where stuff is happening. Bring more reconnaissance. Jazz. 264 battles. 61.4% win rate. His recon use, 7.7. That's a lot healthier. Why exactly he was pushing in the way that he did, I don't exactly know. I saw a lot of things from Jazz that I thought were weird. Or at least that I would do rather different. So maybe he too can still improve some of his gameplay. Anyway, a few takeaways from this game. Bring more recon and push to contact. I'd say that those two are the most important things. Sure enough, there are a lot more things going on. But you want to know where the enemy is, and you can do that by bringing in more reconnaissance and by using that other point, push to contact. You keep pushing until you run into resistance. And then you figure out what sort of resistance that is and how to counter that. If it's entrenched infantry, you can try to bring artillery. You can maybe throw them out with napalm. You can throw them out with other infantry if you're really adamant about it. If you're dealing with tanks, you can take them out with ATGMs. Everything has their counter in this game. Anyway, those were a few of the pointers that I wanted to give. I'm sure that you guys too have something that you want to say about the gameplay. If it's constructive, then by all means, the striker, that's what I was looking for. If it's constructive, then by all means, let me know down below in the comments. I'm all for helping out newer players. I am all against just flaming and going, oh my god, he's so terrible. Yeah, he knows he's terrible. He says, I recently bought Wargame Brendryen, inspired by you, that is me, and I'm a complete noob still trying to learn. He knows his position, he knows his skill level, and he's trying to do something about it. I think that should be applauded, not flamed at. So if you have anything that you could think that will aid him, by all means, let him know down below in the comments. If you have an own replay that to send in, then do so by sending in the link through the sending it through the link in the description. And aside from that, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you soon for more Wargame.